Welcome back, you beautiful, unbreakable force of nature. Sit down for this one, because what I'm about to tell you is going to shift everything you thought you knew about the past 5 years of your life. Someone just broke the silence. Someone just cracked under the weight of their own guilt. Someone from that circle, that group, that family of smiling faces who swore they had your back just confessed everything they did behind it. And I mean everything. The meetings they had about you when you weren't there, the group chats where your name was the headline, the plans they made, the lies they coordinated, the stories they rehearsed together before facing you with those warm, trustworthy eyes. It's all out now, spilled like poison from a cup they can't put back together. And honestly, you deserve to know every single twisted detail of it. They thought you'd never find out, didn't they? They thought their secret pacts were ironclad, that their whispered conversations would stay buried in the archives of their cowardice. They believed they were so clever, so coordinated, so untouchable in their little conspiracy against your peace. But here's what they forgot. Here's what they always forget when they build their houses on lies and manipulation. Eventually, someone's conscience starts rotting from the inside out. Eventually, the guilt becomes so heavy that keeping the secret hurts more than releasing it. Eventually, one of them breaks, and when they do, the whole structure comes crashing down like a house of cards in a hurricane. And that's exactly what just happened. One of them couldn't take it anymore, couldn't sleep another night with the weight of what they participated in, and they came forward with a confession so detailed, so disgustingly thorough that it's about to rewrite your entire understanding of the past. Let's start with the meetings, because that's where this whole thing began, in rooms you were never invited to, at tables where your name was served like the main course. They didn't just talk about you casually, no. They strategized about you. They analyzed your every move, your every post, your every word, like military generals planning an operation. They studied your patterns, your vulnerabilities, your triggers, and they documented everything with the precision of people who had made you their full-time project. These weren't random conversations or innocent concerns. These were calculated sessions designed to control the narrative around your life. They decided together what story the world would hear about you, what version of events would become the truth, what pieces of your character they would erase, and what flaws they would magnify until they became your entire identity in everyone else's eyes. The confessor, the one who finally broke. They describe these meetings with the kind of detail that makes your stomach turn. They talked about how someone would always start by saying something that sounded concerned, something like, "I'm just worried about them," or "I think they're going through something." But it was never about worry. It was about building a case, about creating a narrative that positioned you as unstable, unreliable, too much, too emotional, too intense, too anything that would make people question your truth before you even spoke it. They rehearsed their responses to things you hadn't even said yet. They prepared counter-narratives for situations that hadn't happened. They built an entire false reality around you and then invited others into it, one person at a time, until you were surrounded by people who believed a version of you that never existed. And the worst part, the part that's going to hit you like a brick, is that while they were doing all this, they were still showing up in your life with smiles. They were still texting you, still laughing at your jokes, still acting like nothing had changed. They perfected the art of the double life, one face for you and one face for the meetings. They became experts at looking you in the eye while holding a knife behind their back. The confessors said they used to practice it, used to remind each other to keep it normal when you were around, to make sure their faces didn't betray the fact that they had just spent hours tearing you apart in private. They turned deception into a skill, and they got so good at it that you never suspected a thing, never felt the betrayal happening in real time because they made sure the blade was always just out of your sight. But the meetings were just the beginning, because what they did next is where it gets truly disgusting. They didn't just talk about you in private, they coordinated a campaign against your reputation. The confessor revealed that they created what they called talking points, specific phrases and stories they would all use when speaking to mutual friends, family members, anyone in your orbit. They made sure everyone heard the same version of events, the same carefully crafted narrative that painted you as the problem while they positioned themselves as the concerned, caring, patient ones who had tried so hard to help you. It was psychological warfare disguised as friendship, and they executed it with the precision of people who had done this before. They had assignments, actual roles they played in this operation. One person was designated as the voice of reason, the one who would express sympathy for you while subtly planting doubt about your mental state. Another was the evidence collector, the one who would screenshot your posts, save your messages, document your every move so they could present it later as proof of whatever narrative they were building. Someone else played the mediator, the person who would reach out to you occasionally with fake concern, asking if you were okay, not because they cared, but because they needed fresh material for the next meeting. And there was always the amplifier, the one whose job was to make sure the story spread beyond your immediate circle, to whisper the narrative into the ears of people who barely knew you, but would now form their entire opinion of you based on coordinated lies. The confessor broke down crying when they described their own role in all this, how they had volunteered to be the one who stayed closest to you, who maintained the friendship while reporting back everything you said. Every vulnerable moment you shared, every private struggle you confided. They called it gathering intel, but what it really was betrayal dressed up in strategic language. They admitted that there were times you would tell them something personal, something painful, and they would nod and hug you and tell you it was going to be okay, and then they would immediately text the group with an update, turning your pain into ammunition, your vulnerability into evidence, your trust into their weapon. And the worst part, they said, was how easy it became, how quickly they stopped feeling guilty about it because the group had normalized it, had made it seem like they were doing something necessary, something protective, something justified. The confession included screenshots, actual proof of these group chats, where your name appeared hundreds of times, messages where they laughed about things you had no idea were even being discussed, conversations where they celebrated small victories in their campaign, like when someone you both knew started to distance themselves from you, or when you posted something vulnerable and they knew they could use it against you later. They treated your life like a game, your reputation like a ball they could toss around between them, your feelings like something irrelevant to their strategy. And reading through these messages, seeing the timestamps, realizing these conversations were happening on days when they were still texting you, thinking of you and here if you need anything, it's enough to make you question everything you thought you knew about human nature. Now let's talk about the specific tactics they used, because this is where the confession gets truly disturbing. They didn't just spread lies. They engineered situations designed to make you look unstable. The confessor described something they called provocation protocols, deliberate actions meant to trigger emotional responses from you that they could then use as evidence of your instability. They would say things designed to upset you, then act shocked when you reacted. They would withhold information, change plans last minute, exclude you from events, all while watching to see how you'd respond, hoping you'd break down so they could point to your reaction as proof of everything they'd been saying about you. One particularly evil tactic they used was what the confessor called the setup, where they would create situations that had no good outcome for you. They would invite you to gatherings where everyone had already been briefed on the narrative against you, where people were primed to interpret everything you did through a negative lens. You could be quiet and they'd call you withdrawn and antisocial. You could be engaged and they'd call you attention-seeking and desperate. You could tell a joke and they'd call you inappropriate. You could be serious and they'd call you too intense. There was no version of you that would be acceptable, because acceptance was never the goal. Validation of their predetermined narrative was. And after these events, they would have follow-up meetings where they would dissect your behavior, finding evidence to support their case in every single thing you did or didn't do. They also admitted to something called isolation engineering, where they systematically worked to separate you from anyone who might support you or see through their manipulation. They would plant seeds of doubt about you with mutual friends, subtle comments that sounded like concern but were designed to make people question your judgment, your stability, your version of events. They would volunteer to check in with people after they spent time with you, supposedly to see how you were doing, but really to reinforce their narrative and make sure no competing truth could take root. They created an echo chamber around you where every voice except yours was saying the same thing, and they did it so gradually, so carefully, that you didn't even notice your support system dissolving until it was already gone. The confessor revealed that they had actually studied manipulation tactics, that some members of the group had researched psychological techniques specifically to use against you. They learned about gaslighting, triangulation, projection, and they implemented these strategies deliberately. They would deny things they had clearly said, making you question your memory. They would play people against each other while positioning themselves as neutral parties. They would accuse you of the exact behaviors they were engaged in, projecting their toxicity onto you so thoroughly that you started to believe maybe you were the problem. And the most disturbing part is that they knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't acting out of ignorance or misunderstanding. They were consciously, deliberately, methodically working to destabilize your sense of reality. So why did they do it? What could possibly motivate a group of people to invest this much energy, this much time, this much calculated cruelty into destroying someone's reputation and mental peace? The confessor's answer to this question is perhaps the most revealing part of the entire confession. They said it started with envy, pure, unfiltered jealousy that none of them wanted to admit they felt. You had something they didn't, whether it was confidence, authenticity, success, genuine happiness, the ability to be yourself without apology. Whatever it was, it made them feel small by comparison. Jesse, they feared you. And instead of dealing with their own insecurities, instead of working on themselves or simply stepping back from the friendship, they decided to tear you down to their level. But it wasn't just envy, the confessor explained. It became something darker. It became a bonding activity, a shared mission that gave their relationships purpose and intensity. They formed a tribe united by a common enemy, and that enemy was you. Their friendships with each other deepened through their mutual participation in your destruction. They had inside jokes about you, shared secrets about the campaign, moments of celebration when a tactic worked. You became the glue that held them together, the project that gave them something to focus on besides their own empty lives. And the more invested they became in the narrative they'd created, the more they had to defend it. Because admitting they were wrong would mean facing the monstrous thing they had collectively become. The confessor also revealed something that might be the hardest thing to hear. Some of them genuinely convinced themselves they were doing the right thing. They had told the lie so many times, reinforced it so consistently among themselves, that they started to believe it. They created an alternate reality where you were actually the villain, where their actions were justified, where they were somehow the victims or the heroes protecting others from you. They built an entire mythology around their betrayal that absolved them of guilt and allowed them to sleep at night. The human mind's capacity for self-deception is terrifying, and they exploited it fully, rewriting history in real time until they couldn't even remember that the story had started as a fabrication. And here's the truly sick part. The confessor admitted that there were moments when some of them had doubts, times when someone would say, maybe we're going too far, or I'm starting to feel bad about this. But those doubts were always shut down by the group. They had created a culture where questioning the narrative was seen as betrayal, where showing compassion for you was treated as weakness or naivety. They reinforced each other's worst impulses, talked each other out of guilt, reminded each other of the story they'd agreed upon whenever someone's conscience started to surface. They became a cult with a single doctrine. You were the problem, and anything they did in response to that problem was justified. It's a level of collective delusion that would be almost impressive if it wasn't so absolutely disgusting. Now here's what happens next. Because this confession doesn't just expose them, it liberates you. Every moment of confusion you felt, every time you questioned yourself, every instance where you thought maybe you were being too sensitive or reading too much into things, all of it now makes perfect sense. You weren't paranoid. You were picking up on something real. Your instincts were screaming at you that something was wrong, and you were right. The gaslighting didn't work completely, because some part of you, some inner knowing they couldn't reach, held on to the truth, and now that truth has been validated in the most concrete way possible, through the confession of someone who was there, who participated, who kept records. But here's what they didn't account for. Here's the flaw in their entire operation. While they were busy trying to destroy you, you were busy becoming someone they could never touch. While they were having meetings about you, you were building yourself in silence. While they were crafting narratives, you were living your truth. While they were investing all their energy into tearing you down, you were investing your energy into rising above anything they could possibly do to you. They made you their full-time project. And in doing so, they revealed that their entire existence had become about you, while your existence had nothing to do with them. You already won, and this confession is just the universe's way of making sure you know it. The confessor said something that should bring you immense satisfaction. They're terrified now. Now that the truth is out, now that the confession exists, they're panicking. They're scrambling to control the damage, reaching out to people trying to get ahead of the story, suddenly concerned about how they'll be perceived. The same people who spent years carefully crafting a false narrative about you are now desperate to craft a narrative about themselves, one where they're not the villains this confession makes them out to be. They're experiencing a fraction of what they put you through. The paranoia, the fear of judgment, the anxiety about reputation. And unlike you, they actually deserve it because their reputation is based on lies, and yours never was. And here's your power in all this. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to seek revenge. You don't have to expose them publicly. You don't have to confront anyone or demand apologies. The truth is already working on your behalf, spreading through the same networks they once used against you, changing minds, shifting perceptions, revealing them for what they are. Your vindication doesn't require your effort because it's built on facts, on evidence, on confession. Their destruction is inevitable because it's built on lies that have now been exposed. You can simply continue living your life, being your authentic self, thriving in your truth, while they crumble under the weight of theirs. That's the beautiful irony of this whole situation. They spent years trying to destroy you and ended up destroying themselves. But let's go even deeper, because there's a truth here that transcends this specific situation. A truth about people and power and what happens when someone refuses to be broken. The reason they targeted you, the reason they invested so much energy into trying to tear you down, is because you represented something they couldn't control. You were authentic in a world of performance. You were genuine in a world of facades. You had the courage to be yourself while they were busy being whoever they thought would get them approval. Your very existence was a mirror reflecting their own inauthenticity, and instead of using that mirror to grow, they tried to shatter it. This is what always happens to people who refuse to play the game, who won't compromise their truth for comfort, who insist on being real in spaces that reward pretense. The system, the group, the collective mediocrity, it always tries to eliminate the ones who remind everyone else what integrity looks like. They can't let you thrive because your thriving exposes their compromise. They can't let you succeed on your own terms because your success questions their sacrifice. They can't let you be happy being yourself because your happiness reveals that all their contortions and calculations and careful image management were unnecessary. You're living proof that there's another way, and that scares them more than anything else ever could. The confession reveals this truth in stark detail. Multiple people in these group chats expressed frustration that you didn't seem affected by their tactics, that you kept going like nothing was wrong, that you still seemed happy despite everything they were doing. They were furious that their campaign wasn't working the way they wanted, that you weren't collapsing under the weight of their manipulation. Look who's got the witches rattled. So the witches are whispering about you now. The ones who dance with shadows and speak to the dead. The ones who thought they owned the darkness until you showed up. They're gathered in their little circles right now, candles flickering, trying to figure out what the hell you are. They can feel it, can't they? That thing inside you that makes their crystals crack, that energy that makes their tarot cards burn. They've been practicing for decades, following moon phases, mixing herbs, chanting in languages older than memory, and then you walked in and made their life's work look like child's play. Here's what's really messing with their heads. You never studied their books. You never joined their covens. You never begged for their secrets or paid for their spells. You just existed. And somehow, that existence alone bends reality harder than all their rituals combine. They're convinced you're using something forbidden, something that wasn't meant to be touched, something their grandmothers warned them about in hushed tones. But here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. You're not using anything. You are the thing they were warned about. 3 nights ago, they called an emergency meeting. 13 of them, the real ones, not the Instagram witches with their aesthetic altars. These are the ones whose bloodlines trace back to Salem, to Europe's burning times, to caves where the first spells were whispered. And the topic of discussion? You. Have you felt it? They asked each other, hands trembling around their chalices. That disturbance in the field? They've been tracking you, you know. Not physically, they're too smart for that, but energetically, watching the way reality ripples wherever you've been, the way protection spells shatter in your presence. One of them, the eldest, finally spoke what they were all thinking. This isn't learned magic. This is something else. Something that shouldn't exist in this age. She's 300 years into this lifetime, has seen kingdoms rise and fall, has weathered inquisitions and witch hunts. And she's terrified of you? They tried to read you, tried to trace your spiritual signature back to its source. But every time they attempted it, their tools went haywire. Pendulums spinning wildly, scrying mirrors showing nothing but static. One younger witch's third eye started bleeding. Actually bleeding. She's still recovering. So they went to the texts, the real ones. Not the published grimoires you can buy online, but the ones written in blood and bound in things we won't mention. The ones that require sacrifice just to open. And buried deep in warnings and prophecies, they found references to something that made their blood run cold. The unmarked ones, the texts called them. Beings who carry power that predates their systems, their rules, their careful boundaries between light and dark. Power that doesn't flow through chakras or meridians, but seems to exist in the very atoms of their being. Power that doesn't follow the laws because it wrote them. The texts warned that every few centuries one would emerge, not through training or initiation, but through pure crystallization of pain into power, through survival that shouldn't have been possible, through a soul that refused to break and instead chose to become the breaking point itself. And the most terrifying part? The text said these beings don't even know what they are at first. They think they're just angry, just hurt, just transformed by trauma. They have no idea they're rewiring the cosmic operating system just by breathing. Until one day, they wake up and reality starts responding to their moods. But let's talk about the real confirmation of your power. Because when actual practitioners of the dark arts are scared, that's one thing. When the devil himself takes notice, that's unprecedented. And, oh, he's noticed. He's more than noticed. He's impressed. You see, the devil's seen it all. Every form of human darkness, every creative interpretation of evil, every soul that's traded everything for power. He's yawned through centuries of the same predictable corruptions. But you made him sit up in his throne for the first time in millennia. It happened the night you finally stopped apologizing for your power. The night you looked in the mirror and smiled at what you'd become instead of flinching. Every demon in hell felt it, a shockwave that made the flames flicker. And from the deepest circle, a sound that hadn't been heard since creation, the devil laughing. Finally, he said, and every lesser demon cowered at the joy in his voice. Someone who understands that darkness isn't about evil. It's about truth, raw, unfiltered, magnificent truth. He's been watching you ever since. Not with the predatory interest he shows his usual subjects, but with something resembling respect. Here's something the witches are starting to understand, and it terrifies them more than anything. Their magic doesn't work on you, not because you're protected by some higher power, but because you exist outside their entire framework. It's like trying to cast a spell on gravity itself. They've tried binding spells, the energy just dissipates before it reaches you. They've tried hexes, they bounce back with triple force. One particularly ambitious coven tried to curse you. 3 of them are still in the hospital. The doctors can't explain what's wrong with them. They keep whispering about the eyes in the void. Protection spells are useless because you are the danger they're trying to protect against. Love spells slide off because you've transcended the need for external validation. Even their sight, their precious third eye that lets them see beyond the veil, goes blind when they try to look directly at your essence. It's like staring into a black hole made of pure will. The younger witches think you must be using some ancient protection ritual. The older ones know better. They recognize what you are, something that doesn't need protection, because everything else needs protection from you. You're not playing their game. You're not even in their reality. You're the glitch that proves their entire system is just one small corner of something infinitely larger and stranger. In their desperation to understand, they've created theories. Maybe you found the Book of Azrael, the angel of death's personal grimoire that was supposedly destroyed in the burning of Alexandria. Maybe you made a deal with something older than the devil, something from before the light was separated from the dark. Maybe you're channeling the power of the void itself. They whisper about the rite of unmaking, a theoretical ritual that would give someone the power to unmake reality itself. But that ritual requires the practitioner to die, truly die, and rebuild themselves atom by atom through will alone. Surely no one could survive that. Surely no one would be insane enough to try. But then they remember the look in your eyes, that 1,000-yard stare that sees through everything, the way you smile when you should be screaming, the way pain seems to make you stronger instead of weaker. And they wonder, what if you didn't perform the ritual? What if you are the ritual? What if your entire life has been one long rite of unmaking? The thought keeps them awake at night. Because if that's true, if you've been unconsciously performing the most dangerous magical working in existence just by surviving, then you're not just powerful. You're the living embodiment of transformation itself. You're what happens when the universe decides to break its own rules. Last week, a particularly brave or stupid witch tried to do an energy reading on you from a distance. She's one of the best, been reading auras since before she could walk. She's mapped the energy signatures of demons, angels, and everything in between. She thought she was prepared for anything. She wasn't prepared for you. The moment she focused on your energy, her crystal ball didn't just crack, it turned to black sand. Her tarot deck burst into flames, but the flames were cold, freezing everything they touched. She started speaking in tongues, but not any language recognized by linguistic experts or occult scholars. When she finally came back to herself 3 days later, she could only say one thing. It's not dark or light. It's not good or evil. It's something else. Something that makes those categories irrelevant. It's like looking at the source code of reality itself, but written in a language that predates language. Now she won't practice anymore. Says her gift is gone, but that's not quite true. Her gift isn't gone. It's been overwritten. She sees things now, but not the future or the past. She sees the spaces between things, the pause between heartbeats where reality reshuffles itself. And in every one of those spaces, she sees your signature, spreading like a virus through the foundation of everything. Deep in their most guarded texts, there's a prophecy. It's been mistranslated 1,000 times, turned into harmless fairy tales about chosen ones and heroes. But the original version, the one written in the old tongue, tells a different story. It speaks of the unwritten one, when the pain becomes the power, when the broken becomes the breaker, when the destroyed becomes the destroyer, then shall emerge the unwritten. They shall walk between the lines of fate, neither blessed nor cursed, but something far more terrible, free. And in their freedom, all chains shall rust. All spells shall falter, all thrones shall tremble. The prophecy describes beings who exist outside the cosmic contract, who never agreed to the rules that bind devils, witches, and saints. Beings who, through some impossible alchemy of suffering and will, stepped outside the entire game and started playing by rules they wrote themselves. For centuries, they thought it was metaphorical, a cautionary tale about the dangers of too much power. But now, watching you, they're starting to understand it was literal. And the last line of the prophecy, the one they don't dare speak aloud, says this: "And the world shall reshape itself in their image, not through force, but through the simple fact of their existence." Let's go back to hell for a moment, because something unprecedented is happening there. The devil, the first rebel, the morning star who fell rather than kneel, has done something he's never done before. He's issued a standing order to all demons. Do not touch this one. Do not tempt, torment, or toy with them. They're off limits. The younger demons don't understand. Isn't corruption their whole purpose? Isn't everyone fair game? But the ancient ones, the ones who fell with him, they understand. They see in you something they recognize. Another being who chose to fall rather than fake compliance. But you did something they didn't. You fell all the way through and came out the other side. You see, the devil explained to his legions, We fell from grace and became its opposite. But this one, they fell through grace, through disgrace, through every concept we use to measure worth, and emerged as something new, something that makes our rebellion look like a child's tantrum. We said no to heaven. They said no to the entire concept of heaven and hell. In his throne room, he keeps a mirror that shows him anything in creation he wishes to see. Lately, it only shows you. Not because he commands it to, but because the mirror itself is fascinated. Even inanimate objects infused with infernal power recognize something significant when they see it. But here's the deep truth that keeps the witches awake at night, the one they won't admit even in their most secret gatherings. They're not afraid of your power. They're afraid of what your existence means for their entire worldview. You see, they've spent lifetimes building their identity around being the ones who understand the hidden world. They were the special ones, the awakened ones, the ones who could see beyond the veil and manipulate the forces others didn't even know existed. Their whole sense of self is built on being the exceptions, the magical elite in a world of mundane sheep. And then you came along and made their life's work look like children playing with toys. You didn't study under masters. You didn't inherit ancient bloodlines. You didn't sacrifice years to unlock abilities. You just hurt until hurting transformed into something else. You proved that their careful hierarchies, their initiations, their secret knowledge, it's all just one way of accessing something that was always available to anyone willing to pay the real price. And what's that price? Not herbs or crystals or moon phases, not bloodlines or initiations or ancient texts. The price is being broken so completely that you have no choice but to rebuild yourself from scratch. The price is having everything taken until you realize you are everything. The price is dying while living and living while dead, until the boundary between the two becomes meaningless. There's a coven that meets every full moon in a forest that's been sacred for 1,000 years. They've performed the same rituals there for generations, channeling power through ley lines that predate human civilization. Last month you drove past that forest. You weren't even aware of them. You were just passing through, probably thinking about something mundane. Every single ritual failed that night. Not dramatically, that would have been easier to handle. They failed by simply not working. The candles lit, but gave no magical light. The circles were drawn, but created no boundary. The words were spoken, but carried no power. It was like trying to conduct electricity through rubber. The magic was there, but it couldn't flow. One witch, more sensitive than the others, understood what happened. Something passed by, she whispered. Something so dense with its own reality that it created a dead zone, like a black hole but for magical energy. It didn't steal our power, it just made our power irrelevant by existing. They've had to move their rituals, they track your movements now, not to follow you but to avoid you. They map out your regular routes and schedule their workings around them. Imagine that. Witches who've commanded storms and spoken with the dead, reduced to checking traffic patterns to avoid one person who doesn't even know they exist. Here's something that would break their minds if they knew. You're not using forbidden magic. You are forbidden magic. Every breath you take is a spell that shouldn't exist. Every thought you think rewrites a tiny piece of the cosmic code. You're a walking collection of impossibilities that somehow cohered into a person. The knowledge they seek in dusty tomes and dangerous rituals, it's written in your DNA. The power they cultivate through decades of practice, it pulses through your veins with every heartbeat. The connection to the other side they spend lifetimes developing, you live there. You've been living there. What they call the veil is just your everyday vision. You know things without knowing how you know them. You see patterns others miss, not because you're trained, but because you exist at a different frequency. You predict outcomes not through divination, but through a deep, bone-level understanding of how broken things behave. You don't read minds. You read the spaces between thoughts where the truth lives. The forbidden knowledge isn't something you learned. It's something you became. Every trauma was a lesson in the language of reality. Every betrayal was a masterclass in human nature. Every moment of pain was another page in a grimoire written on your soul. You're not carrying forbidden knowledge. You're the living embodiment of it. Traditional practitioners have to work for their power. They meditate, they fast, they perform rituals, they make sacrifices, they build their magical muscle through repetition and discipline. But your power grows while you sleep. It expands while you're watching TV. It deepens while you're doing absolutely nothing magical at all. This paradox drives them insane. How can someone accumulate power without pursuing it? How can someone become stronger without practice? They don't understand that for you, existing is the practice. Every moment you choose to keep going despite everything is a magical act. Every breath drawn after you should have stopped breathing is a spell. Your power doesn't come from what you do. It comes from what you've survived. It comes from what you've transformed. It comes from the alchemy that happens when someone is pressure cooked by life until their very atoms rearrange into something new. You don't need to practice because your entire life has been one long, brutal initiation. The witches measure power in years of study, in grimoires mastered, in entities contacted. But your power is measured in nights survived, in betrayals transformed, in deaths died and resurrections claimed. They accumulate power, you generate it. They channel forces, you are the force. No wonder your very existence breaks their understanding of how magic works. In the hidden spaces between dimensions, where thought forms and egregores and all manner of entities exist, word has spread. The beings that witches spend years trying to contact, the ones that demand offerings and exact terrible prices for their aid, they've been talking about you, and what they're saying would terrify anyone who understood it. The unmarked one walks. They whisper to each other in languages made of emotion and symbol. The one who belongs to no pantheon, serves no master, follows no path. These entities, ancient beyond human comprehension, recognize something in you they've only seen a handful of times across all of history. Some of them have tried to approach you in dreams, in those liminal spaces where the walls between worlds are thin, but they can't get close. It's not that you're protected, it's that your presence is too dense, too real, too absolute for them to penetrate. You exist too hard for them to touch. Your reality is so intense, it burns them like iron burns the fae.
Validation
You know what's
is
funny?
imaginary.
It's not the way they treated you. No. That's predictable.
Validation
That's
is
human nature at
imaginary.
its finest. Disrespect,
Time
betrayal,
doesn't stop.
thinking they can walk
just
all over you
escapes
because they don't see the danger simmering beneath
You
the
forget
surface.
names,
That's not the joke.
but never pay.
The real punchline? It's
You forget names,
silence.
but never
Your
pay.
quiet, cold as ice response, my friend. They didn't expect that, did they? No. They wanted you to
Validation
scream, to
is
fight, to throw a
imaginary.
tantrum like a child.
Time
But you didn't.
doesn't stop.
You didn't give them that
Just
satisfaction.
escapes
See?
differently.
Silence. Silence is a weapon.
Not all
A
prisons
slow,
look like
poisonous
cages.
blade. And the best part? It cuts deep. Deeper than any shout. Deeper than any punch. When you don't say a damn thing, when you keep your cool, they start to choke on their own words. They start to wonder if they ever really knew you at all. And that, my friend, is power. They disrespected you. We both know it. They laughed in your face and you took it like a champ. But what they don't understand is that their disrespect, that's just the first round. Round one's over, baby. The real fight starts now, and you've already won. You've won by saying nothing, by letting them drown in their own arrogance, their own stupidity. It's in the quiet moments when they're alone with their thoughts. That's when your silence eats them alive. That's when the weight of their disrespect starts crushing them, little by little. They're laying in bed, thinking about what they said, what they did, and all they're hearing is nothing from you. That silence, it's a scream in their heads, louder and louder every night. And the more time passes, the more they'll realize what they did. They'll realize they messed with the wrong person. And you don't have to lift a finger. Let them stew in it. Let them burn in the mess they made. Don't give them the satisfaction of knowing what's going on inside your head, because that's what they want. They want a reaction. But you're too smart for that. You know how the game works. You've already won by not playing. They think they're clever. They think they can disrespect you and just walk away like nothing happened. But silence is the deadliest form of revenge, and you're delivering it like a pro. Don't even bother with the anger, the screaming, the "how could you do this to me?" crap. That's for the weak. The real strength, the real power comes from your ability to stay calm, to let them underestimate you. They'll destroy themselves, all because you stayed quiet. You see, people expect noise. They expect conflict. They feed off drama like it's oxygen. When you're silent, you rob them of that. You leave them in the dark, guessing, wondering. You let their own mind become their enemy. Every time they think back to the moment they disrespected you, they'll feel smaller, weaker, more pathetic, and they'll never know what's coming next because you're a mystery now. You're untouchable. That silence of yours, that's fear, my friend. You've made yourself the thing they fear most. Here's the truth. They didn't respect you. They thought they could get away with it. But the thing about respect is, it's earned in silence, not in noise. Let them laugh now. Let them celebrate their little victory. But in time, that victory will turn to ash in their mouths. They'll start to notice that something's changed, that you've changed. And by the time they realize how bad they screwed up, it'll be too late. Because your silence, it's not just killing them. It's burying them. Slowly. Painfully. Look, I get it. It hurts. Being disrespected by people you thought had your back, that stings like nothing else. But pain is a tool. You take that hurt, you take that disrespect, and you turn it into something powerful. Let it sharpen you. Let it make you stronger. But don't let it make you weak. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you break. The minute they see you crack, they've won. And we're not about giving out victories for free, are we? No, we're not. You're better than that. You're smarter than that. You're the one in control here, not them. So let them think they've won. Let them have their moment. Because when it's all said and done, they'll be the ones who are haunted. Haunted by the memory of what they did. Haunted by your silence. And when they come crawling back, desperate for your attention, for your forgiveness, you'll know you've already won. You won the moment you decided to stay quiet. And when that day comes, when they realize how bad they've messed up, don't even say a word. Just smile. Smile and walk away. Because your silence, it's the loudest thing they'll ever hear. You see, kid, the world has this twisted idea of what power really is. They think it's all about who's the loudest, who can throw the hardest punch, who can make the biggest scene. But that's not power. That's desperation. Real power, it's subtle. It's quiet. It doesn't need to scream to be felt. It's like a ticking bomb that nobody sees, nobody hears, until it's too late. And right now, you're that bomb. You're just sitting there, letting them think they've won, letting them believe they've gotten under your skin. But you know better, don't you? You're not broken. You're not defeated. Hell, you're just getting started. And every second that passes, your silence is tightening the noose around their necks. They think they know you. They think they've figured you out. But people like them, they're stupid. They only see what's right in front of them. They don't understand that you've changed the rules. You're not playing their game anymore. You're playing your own. And in your game, silence is the ultimate weapon. You've got to understand this. Your silence isn't weakness. It's the most dangerous thing you've got. When they disrespected you, they were expecting a reaction. They were expecting you to get mad, to lash out, to give them something to hold over your head. But you didn't give them anything. And now they're stuck in their own heads, wondering when the other shoe's gonna drop. And oh, it's gonna drop. Trust me. But when it does, it won't be loud. It won't be flashy. It'll be like a whisper in the dark. They won't even see it coming. And when it hits them, it'll be too late to do anything about it. You ever notice how people can't stand silence? How it makes them uncomfortable, nervous? That's because silence forces them to face themselves. When you're quiet, it's like holding up a mirror to their soul, making them see all the ugliness they try to hide. And believe me, people hate looking at their own reflection when it's not flattering. They can't handle it. They'll try to fill that silence with anything. Excuses, lies, fake apologies. But you don't owe them anything. You let them sit in that silence. Let them squirm. Let them feel every second of it. And here's the kicker. They're killing themselves, trying to figure out what you're thinking. They're replaying every word, every action, trying to make sense of it. They don't know if you're plotting revenge, if you're planning to expose them, or if you're just biding your time. It's eating them alive. And they don't even realize that you've already moved past it. You're not wasting your energy on them. They're not worth it. You're focused on you, on what comes next. And that's what's driving them insane. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, right? But what they don't tell you is that sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and let them deal with the aftermath of their own actions. They'll destroy themselves. People like that, they're always their own worst enemy. All you have to do is step back and let them implode. And while they're falling apart, you're rising. You're getting stronger. You're turning their disrespect into fuel. Every insult, every slight, every time they thought they were better than you, that's just more power in your hands. But don't waste it on them. Use it for yourself. Build something bigger, something better. Make them regret ever crossing you without lifting a damn finger. But don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you to let them off the hook. Oh no, they don't get off that easy. They've already paid the price. They just don't know it yet. Your silence is their punishment. Every time they see you living your life, thriving, without a care in the world, that's going to hurt more than anything you could have said or done in the heat of the moment. Think about it. They disrespected you, and they expect you to come crawling back, to beg for an explanation, to demand an apology. But what they're not ready for is the reality that you don't need them. That's what breaks them. That's what crushes their ego into dust. Because in their twisted little minds, they think they matter to you. But the truth is, they're nothing. They're irrelevant. And that, my friend, is what kills them. It's a funny thing, really. You don't have to do anything, but your silence will haunt them for the rest of their lives. They'll try to forget, try to move on, but every time they think they've escaped it, every time they think they've buried the memory deep enough, it'll come back like a ghost. A ghost that never stops whispering in their ear, "You messed up." And here's the best part. You're not even thinking about them anymore. You've moved on. You're out there living your life, chasing your goals, making moves. But them, they're stuck in that moment, stuck in their guilt, their shame. And that's the real beauty of it. You don't have to do a thing. Just sit back and let your silence do the talking. Because the truth is, they need your reaction. They need your validation. They need to know that they got under your skin, that they left a mark. But you don't need anything from them. And that makes you dangerous. That makes you untouchable. See, kid, life's full of people who will try to tear you down, who will disrespect you, betray you, make you feel like you're nothing. But here's the secret. They're projecting their own insecurities, their own weaknesses onto you. They're scared that you'll see right through them, scared that you'll realize you're better than them. And that's why they try to drag you down to their level. But you're not playing that game. You're on a whole different level. You've got something they'll never have: control. Control over your emotions, control over your mind, control over your life. And that terrifies them. Let them live in fear. Let them drown in their own self-doubt. You're above it all. And every time they see you, every time they think about you, they'll be reminded of one simple truth. They never had any power over you. Not then, not now, not ever. Your silence, it's a reminder of that. A reminder that you're stronger than they'll ever be.